So Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is the 7th installment within the Mission Impossible franchise, and I love how they make it very distinctive to the James Bond franchise in terms of being really slick and having truly death-defying spy action moments in this series. And on that point, this one truly doesn't disappoint with some absolutely outstanding action sequences, some really cool twists and turns, and some truly jaw-dropping moments. However, I do feel like the villains in this film definitely do let it down. I mean, having a guy reappearing from Ethan Hunt's past could have been really, really cool, but unfortunately, the way in which Esai Morales plays this guy just lacks so much presence, and I wonder if Nicholas Hoult was playing Gabriel instead. Maybe he would have just brought a lot more of a cooler, suave edge to this guy, and I'm sure he will be doing that with Lex Luthor. And I feel like the Entity definitely was cool, especially when he took over Benji's microphone and was giving Ethan Hunt all of the wrong directions to lead him exactly where he wanted him to be. But other than that, I just feel like the Entity was talked about so much, and I feel like this kind of a thing is a bit like a bell curve. Like, the more you talk about it, it does get more and more exciting, but then when you overdo it, then it just loses its impact and then just kind of does become a little bit frustrating. And it is such a shame that it didn't do better in the box office, as it absolutely deserved to, but I feel like it's interesting as the marketing material for the promotion of this movie was focusing on the high octane nature of this action spy movie, which was really, really cool, and definitely is something the audiences want to see, but I feel like they made it a little bit too highbrow, especially how they were overly intellectualizing the narrative of this film, which ultimately couldn't compete with Barbenheimer, which was released 2 weeks after. So firstly, they had to share all of the premium screens, and somehow Oppenheimer was deemed to be this really cool, broody movie, and Barbie, on the other hand, was an absolute juggernaut of a zeitgeist movie, so I feel like Mission Impossible, unfortunately, couldn't compete. And in addition to this, the budget just kept ballooning, firstly because of the pandemic, and secondly because all of the stunts that they wanted to include in this movie were just so ambitious, and I feel like Paramount just wanted to throw all of the money on Tom Cruise, as they absolutely are in the Tom Cruise business. So let's talk about every single action sequence. So I personally am not into underwater sequences, so I didn't think the opening sequence was that great with the submarine, but I absolutely love the one that quickly followed this with Ethan Hunt revealing himself to be the person under the mask, which was just absolutely outstanding. And then when they had the title sequence straight after this, it was just absolutely brilliant. The desert war sequence straight after that I thought was alright. I mean, it was so dusty, you really couldn't see much of what was happening. But then after that, it just went from strength to strength. So firstly, the Abu Dhabi airport sequence, everybody is being really cloak and daggers, especially with all of the AI mess up. And it was like a modernized version of How to Catch a Thief and Catch Me If You Can, which I just thought was so funny, as all of these police people are just running around everywhere and just cannot find Ethan Hunt. And I feel like it was a really good way to introduce Hayley Atwell's Grace character, as she was pretty much a female version of Ethan Hunt. And in a very similar way to how Helena did it to Indiana Jones in Dawn of Destiny, she is actually able to out-slick Ethan Hunt and kind of feels that she is slipping through his fingers. And then this continues in such a cool way in Rome, as all of the car chase sequences are really, really good, especially when there's a number of different factions chasing each other across the city. I do wish that Ethan Hunt would have had a couple of sequences in a really slicked out car, but I guess it was funny to put him in that yellow one. The Venice indoor sequence was really, really intense, especially with the reintroduction of Vanessa's Kirby's character, but I feel like from the outside perspective, it was just a little bit too short, which climaxed in Rebecca Ferguson's character seemingly passing away, but I've heard that she will reappear in the next one. Then, of course, we have the pièce de résistance, which is, of course, the Orient Express. Firstly, how Ethan Hunt is going to get on the train, which is, of course, the biggest stunt that they have ever done. And in the next movie, they're going to top this, so I cannot wait for Final Reckoning. And in parallel, you get to see Hayley Atwell turning into Vanessa Kirby and becoming her doppelganger. So that was absolutely brilliant. Followed by the rooftop battle on the train, which was just outstanding. And then you just think it can't get any better. And then you get to see the destruction of each carriage and Ethan and Grace just trying to run through each room. It was just absolutely spectacular. And I just feel like the quest of the two parts of the key across this movie definitely felt like a video game in the best possible way. So let's go through all of the big main players now. So I feel like Tom Cruise was absolutely extraordinary as Ethan Hunt. Even though he has been playing this role for so many years, he really does show that he does still have it, as not only has he got so much presence, Not only is he absolutely brilliant in all of the action sequences, I just feel like he carries this movie so well. And then we have Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames as his second in command, and I feel like they are helping him in so many different sequences. And Simon Pegg definitely gets his own couple of sequences as well, especially when he is trying to work in a very quick way to disarm everything from an Abu Dhabi airport perspective. And I just loved all of the riddles, especially how Grace was unexpectedly helping them with some of the clues. And on that point, I feel like Hayley Atwell was brilliant as Grace. I feel like she was super slick, super smooth, and definitely brought the fun and charisma to this movie. And then we have Vanessa Kirby returning, and I feel like she similarly was able to bring a lot of slickness to this movie, but just with a much darker edge. I feel like you could tell that Rebecca Ferguson was just ready to fully check out from this movie, and unfortunately, I just feel like Esai Morales just lacked so much presence and therefore impact. I absolutely loved seeing an absolutely psychotic side to Pom Klementieff. She was so unstoppable and super unhinged. And I also think that Shea Wingham was really good as an intelligence agent, just trying so hard to stop Ethan Hunt at all costs. But then in the final act, you definitely get to see a lot more of his personality, and similarly, what kind of an edge this character has as well. So, you know, I really enjoyed Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Every single installment within this franchise is absolutely brilliant, and somehow they just constantly top themselves, not only with brilliant action sequences, but just having a really intriguing plot. It's not a perfect film, as I do think there are a couple of things that let this film down, especially all of the villains, but I feel like on the whole, it was super enjoyable and definitely deserved to do a lot better. I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in Final Reckoning, and apparently it's not going to be the last time that we see Ethan Hunt on screen. So that film cannot come soon enough, but as far as Dead Reckoning is concerned, I absolutely loved it, and so I'm going to give it a massive 7.5 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of Dead Reckoning? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.